Hi again then guys, and so we've got another Special Projects replica build for you today, and this time it's not as visually accurate as I would have liked, but there's nothing we can really do about that at the moment. But it's a replica of an extremely popular super sports car, and actually probably the car that turned my opinion around on Aston Martin, because I didn't really used to care about Aston Martin that much. Then this car came out and it kind of made me like them, and I have ever since. It's the Aston Martin DBS. Now the closest that we can get to that on the game is of course the DB9, and in order to do this replica I've bought the premium spec DB9. Now obviously you could go for the non-premium, kind of no point in doing that though, and the entire car is pointless really. There's no reason to have a non-premium DB9. But as far as the visuals, we'll go over first of all to the visual tuning garage for the relatively simple setup. I've got wheels which don't look too far off, and also the colour scheme for those that do want it. Then of course go over to the more important thing, which is the tuning garage, and finally take it out to the track to see what it can do. Now we haven't done anything to the car's bodywork at all. There is of course the optional wings, the optional body kit, etc., which some may want to use, but even then it doesn't look like a DBS, so I just opted not to and keep the clean lines of the car. Now for the rims, I've gone for these KMC KM677 rims, which are not too far actually off the DBS's rims. They're not exactly the same of course, but they're not too far off. And as far as the colour of the car, for the body itself I wasn't actually able to find where I got this particular colour from. But of course there are a number of silvers on the game, but I've gone for a particular silver called Platinum Metallic, which just brings out the shape of the car quite well. As I said, I wasn't able to find out where that came from though. I found a source that said it was from Nissan, but I cannot for the life of me find what Nissan that comes from. So if you can find it, you could use that, but of course there are other silvers as well. And for the rims I have used a grey, of course, and the grey that I've gone for in particular, and of course you don't have to stick to these colours either, it's a production model, but I've gone for Titanium Metallic, which comes from the TVR Speed 12, which go really well I think with the silver. So that's it for the visual look, pretty simple overall. So now let's take it over to the tuning garage for the more important thing for this particular replica, which is of course the mechanical setup. So for this particular replica, it is PP relevant, as I like to try and make my replicas as much as possible. I've gone for sport soft tyres because it is of course more of a street based tune. I've left the brakes stock just to make it feel a little bit more authentic. If you do want to fit racing brakes, that's understandable, but I've just opted not to, just to make it a bit more realistic and true to a road car. For the suspension we've got a ride height of 120, springs we've stiffened up a little to 750 and 775, the dampers and anti-roll are all on 3, neutral camber and toe. We'll come back to the gearbox in just a second. Again, like with the brakes, I've left the clutch, flywheel and prop shaft stock, just to, again, keep it a bit more authentic to a road car. For the diff we've got the lowest initial torque to keep the handling relatively loose, high acceleration and braking sensitivity. As far as the power, the real DBS of course has 510 horsepower, so we've got a stage 2 engine tune, semi-race exhaust, and that's primarily actually for the sound, and also the sports cat, and then we've reduced the power down to 90.3%, and that is of course with an oil change as well. As far as the weight, I have opted to make the car closer to the actual car's weight distribution rather than just the weight. And what I mean by that is of course you can get the weight of the car very easily, but the DBS actually has a different weight distribution to the DB9. So I've gone for the stage 2 weight loss, window weight reduction, and then brought us up to 1,589 kilos, which is the actual weight of the car, but then also we've put that ballast all the way to the front to bring us as close as possible to the actual weight distribution of a DBS, which is actually 5743, but this is as close as we can get without making it overly heavy or changing it around too much as far as the PP. And finally for the gearbox, we are running the actual gear ratios of the real car, which is always nice when you can do that. So we've got the auto setting of 230, then the individual gears of 3150, 1950, 1440, 1150, 940 and 760, with the actual car's final drive of 371. So that's it overall for the mechanical replica of the car. Fairly realistic in all things except visually, unfortunately. But now let's finally take it out to the track to see how it performs. Now, many of my replicas tend to be naturally inclined towards competition. Others are more purely for the fun and for collectors. This, I would say, is more of the latter. This is more of a fun tune just for people who would like to experience what the DBS could feel like were it on the game. Now, hopefully, we'll get the car on the game eventually because it is a very nice car to have, but for now, this is unfortunately as close as we can get. Unless, of course, you want to buy another game that does feature the car like Project Gotham or Forza. But on Gran Turismo, at least, this is as close as we can get. So, if you decide to use this replica on your DB9, obviously I hope you find it fun. And if, by any chance, you do use it for racing, obviously I hope you find it competitive as well. But for any who are new to the channel, who would like to keep up with other replicas and also custom builds like this in the future, be sure to hit subscribe down below. But for now, as always, thanks for watching.